Do you guys remember that hollow threat your parents made when you were a kid? How when you went off to college, they were going to move away and not tell you? Yeah, that happened to me. Don't worry, I found them. They thought they could hide. I found them. So who here has family that lives out of town? Holidays are fun, right? Kind of just got to go with the flow. It's the only way to get through them. So I'm going to bring you back. Christmas 2013. It was our turn to travel to where I eventually found my parents in North Carolina. You're probably thinking we flew. No. I'm way too cheap for that. Brian and I were driving. He was my boyfriend at the time. The trip should take between 10 or 11 hours. But if you hit traffic in either New Jersey or on the Beltway, you're pretty much guaranteed to miss all of Christmas. We didn't want that to happen, so we left early. As soon as we got in the car, Brian mentions, for probably the 1000th time in the last 2 weeks, how he wants to stop at the best restaurant ever in Philadelphia that he saw on TV. On that Diners, the Drive-Ins, the show. Got it. I don't know about you guys, but this kind of road trip, my first priority, and really my only priority, is obviously making record-breaking time, right? That means you don't just stop by some major metropolitan area for a quick lunch. Duh, Brian. We can dawdle all we want on the way home. We ended up approaching Philadelphia around 10 in the morning. Too early for lunch? Onward we went. We got near Washington, D.C., and Brian got on this restaurants that have been on TV kick again. This time he wants to stop by our nation's capital for a quick lunch. Why can't we do this on our way home? I couldn't understand these detours. I wasn't having any of it, so I blew by Washington, D.C. We ended up stopping right off of the highway at my choice, an A&W root beer. And I was very excited because I love root beer. So anything made by the root beer people must be equally delicious, right? No. Our food took an eternity. And once we finally got it, I wouldn't have given it to my dog. We'd actually considered abandoning our order and our American dollars paid. But time is of the essence on a road trip, if you'll recall. And I felt we were already committed. I do remember shedding a tear or two, not only because our food took long enough for the chickens to hatch, but because I alone had to carry the burden of selecting that abominable lunch location. Needless to say, tensions were a little high when we got back into the car. We were both very unsatisfied by our lunch, and Brian was upset that I refused to cooperate with his plans to stop by Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. Why can't we do this on our way home? It didn't make any sense. I couldn't understand his motivations. My imagination started going wild. I eventually accused him of, get ready, hating my mother and trying to keep me from seeing my family. So Brian got a little upset. Okay, Brian got a lot upset, and he yelled at me, "That's not the point, Samantha." Then what is the point, Brian? He got quiet, and probably for the first time in, well, ever, I let it go. We continued traveling south and got a little stir-crazy in the car, so we decided to play a game. Childhood favorite of many, I Spy. As we're playing, we pass a milestone of most of my road trips south. See, there's this truck stop on I-85 that I adore. It's huge, clean, Dunkin' Donuts and a Subway, great prices on fuel, called Love's. Brian had mentioned stopping there, but we had just stopped, and I hadn't started listening to him, so why was I about to now? Blew by Love's. Brian got upset again. Again, what is going on with this guy? On his next turn, he said, "I spy something glittery," to which I promptly replied, "That is not a color." I got a a big sigh. Will you just go with it, please? For once today, will you go with the flow? So I did. I started guessing. Was it my cell phone case? No. Was it the reflection of the sun off my windshield? What kind of color is glittery? No, it wasn't any of those things. So I continued driving and guessing. Brian began fiddling around in his pocket. And he eventually produces an engagement ring. And he asks me to marry him, which I accepted while continuing to drive. It was then that he let me in on all of his plans for the day. His original intention was to propose at the Love Statue in Philadelphia as a stranger took our photo. His backup plan was to ask me to marry him in Washington, D.C. His last resort plan was to propose marriage to me at my favorite truck stop in Virginia, coincidentally called Love's. And I managed to ruin every single one of these incredibly romantic and thoughtful plans. Never fear, he married me anyway. We're currently living happily ever after. And I learned an important lesson that day. Sometimes, especially around the holidays, you really should just go with the flow. Mr. Hunt.